All right. All right, sweet. She's working.
Nice.
All right. So yeah, this is the second interview that myself here, Tim Lamont, is doing with an old friend, Chris Burgess. Chris is a he works for Lacrosse New Brunswick and has been a lacrosse coach and volunteer for, yeah, my God, like at least almost 5 years, pushing 10 years. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been friends for a long time, and so really what this interview is for if you're considering, working for your town's sports and rec organization or aspiring to be a professional coach, really in any sport. Um, if you're an athlete in general, like Chris is a longtime athlete as well, like as an avid lacrosse player. Um, and so if you're considering any type of career or profession in sports or athletics, Chris is also very passionate about exercise and body mechanics. Hopefully you'll be able to glean some information and some insights from this interview. And whether you're watching and seeing us here on YouTube or listening on the podcast, hopefully it's of benefit. So with that out of the way, yeah, Chris, um, can you describe yourself a little bit?
Yeah, Tim, thanks for having me. Yeah, so like you said, we've been knowing each other for a while. Kind of started my lacrosse career when I was 12 years old in Truro. Played hockey growing up, whatever, but I'd say sports were like a major part of, who I am and how I developed into the man I am. Kind of led me along through playing for provincial teams and whatnot, and I just kind of love the game, and that's kind of how I ended up where I am now, working for Lacrosse New Brunswick. Other than that, it's I'm just all lacrosse all the time, and I have a pretty crazy spring, summer, and then the fall, winter kind of dies down. So I have almost this cyclical kind of seasonal uh, workload, we'll say. Yeah, so kind of all over the place, get to work from home. So I know it's great. Enjoy where I'm at now. But I would say on the way there, I think, yeah, just everything about sport, especially team sport, I would say kind of shaped me who I am, all those values, contributing, trying to keep an open mind, managing relationships, and, just working hard. I think, that's how I would like to describe myself.
Yeah, perfect. It's your description. So, can you describe your current role or
Yeah,
roles?
so
I
I
know you have
my
several.
yeah, my role, I guess my career with Lacrosse New Brunswick, it's interesting. So I'm the only employee at Lacrosse New Brunswick, which is, a provincial sporting organization. I'm the technical director, so essentially I'm in charge of kind of coordinating basically the product, if you want to think of it like that. So all the coaching courses and coaching certifications, helping to coordinate programs, our provincial teams, helping our clubs find funding, and just kind of providing on-floor support wherever. I'm kind of because we don't have an executive director, and a lot of like these medium-sized sports are, typically 1 to 2 employees, and so I kind of do a lot as well, like on the financial side, like chasing money, applying for grants, reviewing, potential funding opportunities and, bridging connections with other sports organizations. On the coaching side, more of a passion project. I coach a junior lacrosse team in New Brunswick, in the high performance sector. So a lot of that is kind of on my own, and I get, honorariums on the side or whatever. But that I would say that's my passion project.
Yeah. And then you also play as well, right?
Yeah, I did take a bit of a hiatus, but I am playing again for our new senior club, the Fiddleheads. For those that may or may be listening, if you don't understand what a fiddlehead is, anyone from New Brunswick knows very well what that is. I think that's kind of the beauty of the name. Um, just a very New Brunswick thing. So yeah, started playing again this year actually, and that has been a eye-opening experience after taking a few years off the floor. Nonetheless, a nice new challenge to kind of engage and keep myself honest.
Nice. So yeah, really all around, like all the back end stuff that goes into the logistics of sport, the financials of sport, ethics and rules, as well as coaching and like actual boots on the ground experience.
Yeah.
Sweet. Great. What was your upbringing like?
Well, I think I had I came from a great spot. A great family, not too much financial distress. And really, when I think about my childhood, it was opportunity. My parents always, push for me to take advantage of opportunity, whether that be in sport or outside of sport. And seemingly in hindsight, now that I'm older and understand what like a household financial situation looks like, couldn't thank my parents enough for like the hours and hours and hours of them driving me around. Even when I was playing hockey, like I think while I was a goaltender playing hockey, and when I decided lacrosse was my first sport, um, my father was just like, "That's awesome, that's great. Let's do it." And in hindsight, well, he had spent thousands and thousands of dollars on equipment for me to turn around and say, I'm going to go another direction. But nonetheless, when it came to support, again, my family was all about like supporting my athletic experience, and I think that really helped me kind of explore who I wanted to be, and yeah, gave me goals to work for towards, gave me a structure outside of the typical like school structure as a young guy. So yeah, I don't know, it was great. I also think back to the summers working on a blueberry farm in August when it was just 12 to 14-hour days in the sun doing nothing but looking at berries flow into a box. But it was work that needed to be done, and then the family did it. So, I would be remiss not to bring that up. That definitely taught me what it meant to, contribute to like a small group and pull your weight. Otherwise, you're letting down the family. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I think it was a good mix of like, relatively like we didn't have to go. I didn't have many family struggles or anything. But as some of my former coaches would say, maybe just a little tiny bit of manufactured adversity to keep me honest.
Okay. So some manufactured adversity and and a passion for teamwork, working with other people, structure, and and then yeah, hard work, sometimes grueling hard work in the sun, but
Yeah,
all for the best. Or kind of that was the upbringing that brought you to where you are now.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you often think back to, honestly, I often think back to like working on the farm. Um, and like if that didn't exist when I was growing up, like what would I look like? I have no idea. Probably be a completely different person.
How did some of those early challenges influence your worldview?
Yeah, I think when I was in high school, I was definitely like I don't know, I don't want to say like an anarchist, but like definitely like tear it down, build it new, whatever. Almost like a revolutionist to a point, like how I felt, and you know, and I think that just comes from, I don't know, I didn't understand the world. I would see some individuals that seemingly didn't work hard, and I saw they had a lot of success, and I thought there was an issue. And then the older I got, the more I recognized that like maybe different people they have different circumstances and take different opportunities differently, right? So I would say the early challenges in my life, I definitely gained a respect for just people that worked hard. And and minimize their excuses and whatever their endeavors were. I think I also definitely placed a high value on people with like selfless ambition, maybe. Um,
Okay.
so people that really wanted to push whatever they believed in, for the sake of that rather than for personal gain.
It's like just
And
the
I
sake
guess
of
the
their
older I get,
passion.
yeah, for the sake of their passion. And, the older I get, I understand, the world and myself a little differently. But at the end of the day, I think, the challenges I did have growing up, I think, definitely showed me how to appreciate individuals that were like, for lack of a better term, willing to just suck it up and do the work. Yeah, so I definitely, it's still to this day, like when I see individuals that are, in whatever they're doing and like, obviously lacrosse focus in my professional career, but I see athletes that are willing to just do whatever just for the sake of whatever the goals of that group may be, and whether they're getting the floor time or not. And that, yeah, it still resonates with me today.
So like yeah, individuals who are just in this unwavering pursuit of a goal or like a mission.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Would uh would your younger self be surprised that you became the person that you are today or have the roles that you have today?
I don't know. When I was younger, I really had absolutely no clue what I wanted to do professionally. I just knew I wanted to be like in a competitive environment. Um, and then, as I got, started to get through high school, I was kind of thinking, oh, maybe I want to get into strength and conditioning. And I kind of did a little bit to kind of bridge the gap to where I am now. But um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe surprised that I'm able to maintain, a coordinated and organized organization. Because in high school, like I was definitely not that guy at all. Um, so I think in some ways, yes, but I think in others, as a kid, I always knew that I would always be involved in sport in whatever capacity, um, and just kind of made it happen.
Yeah. Okay. As you kind of looking back to that younger self, what's one piece of advice based on what you've learned? What would it be and why? And you might have alluded this already, but maybe like, looking at organizational skills earlier on or something, or
Yeah, I
is there
think
something else?
maybe, I'm definitely like a learn as you go type of person. I know a lot of people are.
Yeah.
Um, I almost prefer that like trial by fire methodology. I
Okay.
find nothing easier to get a grasp of something than just to be thrown into it. Um, so I don't know. I think if I had advice to myself, would probably be more personal advice, like I don't know, maybe personal health advice, like maybe, oh, you're not going to be on the ice or on the floor every day. I think mobility and like stretching, even though that's a pretty simple thing, but as I get older and I'm like working at a desk a lot of the time, and then I got to go drive and I hop on the floor for an hour. Um, and at 28 years old, I probably shouldn't have all these aches and pains that I do. So maybe like honestly, just taking care of my physiology might be some good advice. And honestly, financial, I I didn't save any money when I was until, the past few years of my life as I start to get established in my career. But, I've many friends and individuals that I know that like started, long-term financial planning when they were a lot younger, and undoubtedly they'll be in a great financial position much earlier than I probably will be in terms of like, settling down and retirement and all of that. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, I don't know. Something my father stressed as well that I did not really listen to until until I was kind of out on my own. So yeah.
Okay. So health and finances kind of separate from your career, but still very impactful into your life then.
Yeah, and I think just like taking care of your own backyard before you look past the fence kind of thing, you know.
Okay. What, as you look back to, what seemingly insignificant habit or routine from your early life is compounded into a major strength in your career?
Yeah, I don't know. I think honestly just I wouldn't call it insignificant, but like if there's work to be done, just doing it. Um,
Yep.
I think uh, I don't know, something to be said about like segmenting things you don't want to do. Um, and I wasn't, the greatest at, especially in like school, if there was some schoolwork that I just did not care about.
Yep.
I was like struggle to get started. But it always was like, okay, just start it. If you start it, then it's going and kind of segmenting things. Uh, and honestly, I think planning too, like I'm one that thinks you can never be too prepared. So even just making some sort of plan for whatever it is, even if it's like really small, something as simple as like going to the grocery store, having a list instead of not, like things like that. I like lists. And I think, yeah, like without, I have a pretty crazy to-do list, but it's all segmented into priority and, groupings of types of work and stuff. And I think that just like general keeping track of like where you want to go and like maintaining that end goal in mind related to what you actually have to do. I think that's, something I picked up in sport. And if I didn't have those skills, like I would definitely not be where I am today.
So breaking things down to smaller pieces and just saying, us, like, I'm gonna just start it. Like, I'm gonna start it no matter how uncomfortable or inconvenient it is. I'll just get it started and now the ball's rolling a little bit.
Yeah, no, exactly.
This one might be a bit of a reiteration. Like, what key lessons did you learn in school or through self-study? You mentioned like what you just said, kind of breaking things down to baby steps, getting the ball rolling. You've mentioned the value of just honest hard work and sticking through things and grinding a bit, organizational skills, like the importance of those, financial planning and health. Is there any other lessons that you've from any point in your time, from a kid till recently, that you think were important?
Yeah, I mean, I think and when you're trying to start, like if you want to do a particular endeavor and you don't know what to do, um, I think in general, like if you have a reputation of, accomplishing things and doing what you say, then people
Mhm.
will be more likely to help you. Um, you know, from like a mentor mentee perspective, like if you're in a situation where you like have a mentor, they're probably much more likely to give more of their time and mental energy to you if they're inspired by your effort and your pursuit of whatever you want to do. So, and at the end of the day, like you got to do it yourself. If you have something to do, no one's going to come around and help if you're not willing to do it. I mean, that's not
Mhm.
always completely true, but I would say for the most part, you know, I definitely learned that. Like, especially going into university, it's like no one's gonna help you. You have to do it yourself. And if you do good work, then maybe people will take an interest and start to contribute. Um, so I think managing reputation was is that's how I would kind of put that. And yeah, it takes a while to fully understand that picture.
Okay. So to even know what reputation you want to have, took a while to even come up with that.
Yeah, and like what does that even look like? And I think, like learning through even like education, like there's a leader in the room telling you what to be done. And, obviously there's kind of like in any group, like a hierarchy of individuals with their reputation as it relates to like the leader.
Mhm.
Um, and that's, I think in school there was always like like the top student that sat in front of the class that asked all the questions. And then like, I don't know, I've often found myself in the back of the classroom being an idiot,
Yeah.
making jokes, trying to pass the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's not to say I had teachers that I thought we had a really good relationship and I was no different. And then in another class with a different teacher that didn't resonate with that behavior, we'll say. And the relationship wasn't as good, right? I think the other piece there is like everyone may talk about like having a reputation and like managing your reputation, but understanding that, everyone that you work with or work for might have a different interpretation of your reputation. So like it can never stop. You always got to be working on it. Yeah, kind of a long-winded answer to that, but
Almost sounds like identifying some values to live by and establishing some principles to stick to. Whether that's being a responsible person, hardworking, ambitious, honest, trustworthy, kind of, whatever these values are that you want to represent you in your reputation, and then applying some sort of principled living to each of those. So when you walk in a room or you're given an opportunity to do a task or showcase your skills, you approach it with, okay, like like I'm gonna get this done because that's who I am. That's my reputation. That's the values I exert or exurb out into the world, if that's even a word.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
let's see. Who was a major influence during your learning years or right now? So we're all
Yeah, I
kind of
think
still learning.
yeah, I think in my career, I would say Chet Konechny was probably the most influential in terms of leading me to where and I don't know, providing an example of where my sport of choice could take me outside of on the floor. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I would also say my father as well. My father's very much a no excuses, get it done, um, to a fault, some would say. But like, and if you asked him, he would say that, but he's just okay with it. He's like okay with who he is and just wants to chasing his ambitions. So I'd say, yeah, those two were definitely major influences and continue to be.
Okay. What sparked your interest in your field? This one might be a bit of a, you mentioned teamwork. You could, it's competitive in nature, like whether it's in the office or boardroom or on the floor. Was there anything else?
Well, I think really like I started coaching lacrosse when I was still playing junior, honestly, just so I could have more time in the rink and like access to like a floor and a net. Really. When I
Yeah.
started, I was like 15 when I started coaching. And then I quickly learned that I really enjoyed coaching. Um, and then it just kind of kept going from there. And I don't know if it was necessarily like something sparked an interest, but if we were to go way back to the beginning, I remember the first time I ever like played lacrosse at all. And it was when a friend of mine invited me out to try lacrosse and he was interested and we did this drill called the gauntlet where you basically run by the whole team and they cross check you into the wall. And I remember he went through and he got clobbered and fell to the floor and like was like, I'm not playing this sport. And I did the same thing and I thought it was awesome. Um, so you could argue that that moment was probably what sparked my interest in my field. And if that didn't happen, like, you know, don't know where I'd be. And all it took was me getting smashed into a brick wall when I was 12.
Yeah, maybe some brain damage or something.
Yeah.
Um, what's a controversial opinion you hold that challenges the status quo in your field, and whether that's coaching or the back end logistics and kind of rules and regulations side of it, or maybe even both? And how did you arrive at it?
Well, I think the sports system in Canada is nonprofit driven. And just by nature of nonprofit organizations, there is, call it what you will, there's a lot of red tape if you really want to get things done. Um, I look in the States and see the private for-profit model, and I see the benefits to both. Um, Now, I think a lot of sport organizations are very reluctant to engage with private sport organizations because they see a more agile organization that can kind of just make decisions on their own. And I think
Mhm.
that nonprofits would be remiss not to work with different styles of organizations because of the different strengths. So, for example, like our provincial sporting organization in Canada, um, it's pretty stable. There's not going to be it's not the organization will never turn on a dime. There's too many checks and balances, and
Mhm.
there's not a lot of huge dollars in funding coming in, but there's going to be funding coming in all the time every year. Stable funding, regardless of what government's in. It might change a little bit, but for the most part, if your organization is doing the right things, they get rewarded by, the provincial government and the provincial, like the Sport NB, for example, who governs us. Um, Now, I think in nonprofit sports, there it's all volunteer based, so it becomes challenging when your vice president of your board, for example, is as a conflicting opinion, and I'm here doing all the work, and maybe I don't agree with what he has to say. I can't necessarily make a move. The group has to decide what move we have to make and make steps, and sometimes it takes years and years. So I think
Mhm.
in saying that, a controversial opinion I have, other than working with private sport organizations, is holding volunteers accountable to their roles if they have roles that have inherent power. Um, it's hard to look at someone and say, hey man, you did not do what you were supposed to do. X, Y, and Z is negatively affected because of this. Like, can we rectify the situation? When it's someone that's not getting paid to do it and they're sitting on a board or in a group because they want to contribute to the growth of their game or whatever cause the organization serves. So, and it's difficult, but I think it's necessary. And yeah, I would say anytime I bring up accountability to volunteers, it's a 50-50 split in the room pretty much every time. Yeah.
So I imagine some of the volunteers that tilt towards that they're incredibly passionate. They really want to see the sport progress, and the people that participate in it, have a good time and grow as individuals, teamwork, everything that goes into sports and the whole culture around it. So like half of those people, like if you said, your actions or your kind of failure points have caused these effects, what can we do about it here? Those people that are really, really passionate would likely, do some rectifying of that, look at those mistakes and, do their best to correct them. But then this other 50%, why do you think they're there? Is it like the prestige of, or the prestige of holding one of these positions, or perhaps the notoriety, or just the sense of feel good and kind of something to do to pass time while kind of seeming like they're contributing something to society or to culture?
I
Or
think
like
most
what's your
people
opinion?
mean I think most people mean like they have the best intentions going into some of these roles. And I think, well, it's challenging when you have a volunteer role and you sign up to do whatever, and it's a lot more work than you expected.
Mhm.
It puts people in a tough position. I think in reality, 90% of volunteers are in it for some self-interest, whatever how small that is. And it makes sense. You could probably make that argument for almost anything that anyone does. You know, Even myself, when I started coaching, I started coaching because I wanted to be in the rink. Even in my job now, like I do this job because I I enjoy it and I love it. Yeah, I'm like passionate about growing the game and helping others, but so, you know, just some you see it all the time with coaches, for example. A parent will coach their son's team because they need a coach, and
Mhm.
maybe their son doesn't get to play that sport that year if they don't step up. So while that is like a noble endeavor, you could probably make the argument that that's out of self-interest. Some people climb boards because they want to increase the opportunity in an organization so they can access the organization or their children. I mean, you see it a lot with parents. And I
Mhm.
don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you just got to understand that going in, um, who you're talking to and who you're dealing with and why they're there. But I mean, I also think it's important, like with any team, for example, like with our junior team, every year we ask them before we start, why are you guys here? Why do you keep showing up? And then everyone's on the same page. You have some athletes that are there because they like want to win games. You have other athletes there that are like they want to, just like accomplish something with some of their best friends. And some people don't even know why they're there. They just like it.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, I'd say so. Seems pretty well rounded. Like, some people are there. Yeah, it sounds like sometimes out of necessity, some of these volunteers that don't perform as well as perhaps a private person, like kind of like alluding to that, the struggles with the volunteers sometimes is, maybe if it is a parent who doesn't know a lot or, is also motivated by, they want their kid to be playing. They're in these roles not necessarily because they're great at it, but there is passion there and there's commitment, but they might not necessarily have the skills to really move move mountains, I suppose, inside of the league, or their role is just kind of go along and hope to
yeah,
not just sink the ship would be like a good outcome, I suppose.
yeah, really, like if you think about, for-profit sport organization, if there is a coach that doesn't perform optimally based on whatever, key performance indicators their employers have, well, they don't perform, then someone else gets that role, or they move to a different role, or they're let go. Um,
Hmm.
in a nonprofit organization, there's no, unless you really screw up and like breach a, code of conduct, um,
Mm.
or like make some massive mistakes, there's no, and not to say there should be, because if there was, I don't think sport nonprofit organizations would even function. So I think that's the other thing, right? Like in a nonprofit, there's like a lot of room for growth because you can make mistakes, and if you keep an open mind, there's room to, I guess, climb the ladder without, and there's less benefit to climbing the ladder personally from like a financial perspective, but it's more stable. So, you know, um, I don't know, you could kind of look at it either way. There's something to be said though of the nonprofit way. It's like purely the democratic process. If you're an individual that believes strongly in the democratic process, um, yeah, it's like a great place to interact, like a low risk environment to, interact with the process like that in your own way. Yeah.
What's your favorite part of the job?
My favorite part is by far coaching on the floor. Um, I would be lying if I said I liked to like look at our registration data and move it over to another spreadsheet so I can send it to Lacrosse Canada. That's not something I enjoy.
Yeah.
Um, I would get enjoyment for seeing the numbers growing every year. That gives me some satisfaction long term, I guess. But
Yeah.
definitely getting on the floor and working with people. I think, even I didn't coach any provincial teams this year, but bouncing around to their team practices and interacting with the coaches and like, running a few practices here and there or the stuff we do off season, um, sitting down with athletes and, especially in our high performance programs, getting to know them, getting to know their motivations, where they want to go, and just like, yeah, talking lacrosse, be in there all day, every day, and I'd be happy.
Yeah, is it really the boots on the ground, like the sport, culture around it, like on the bench, on the floor, the energies that come with it?
Yeah. Yeah. There is nothing funner than like being on the bench in a close game with a packed rink, and you know that, it's you, and you look across to the other bench and you see the other coach, and if everything's going well, you're in this chess match. And that is just bumps thinking about it. Thinking about big games, and yeah, nothing more fun than that.
Right. What was your toughest setback along the way, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, my toughest setback. I'd say from an athlete would be injuries, but in my career, financial constraints outside of my control. I think, yeah, like in a growing, relatively small organization. Um, yeah, and like I don't know if it's the setback would be a word, but like having to interact with individuals that, have a vote at the table where I don't, and they see things in a completely different light or have a completely opposing opinion,
Hmm.
and trying to accomplish the goals that I believe are absolutely necessary. And someone might not have the same opinion. And, that happens all the time, probably in like everywhere in your life. And there's been a few, I guess, of those moments, we'll say, in the boardroom that, at the time were setbacks. But I mean, from an athletic mindset, almost like, is this a obstacle or like an opportunity?
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. There were times where I've been looked over for coaching positions that, at the time I thought was a major setback. And well, going back to reputation, like reputation in leagues and even with the national sporting organization, that I'm like, this maybe set me back in my pursuit of those larger goals. Um, but at the end of the day, like, you just do what you can with setbacks. And I pretty much every time I've had a major career setback, I've been able to look at the silver lining and just try to frame it as an opportunity to improve. Just as honest feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. So like, so some of it would be, sounds like some of the general politics in the boardroom and behind the scenes. Sometimes maybe not necessarily setbacks, but just friction points. And then also just these, when you have had a certain expectation and then it didn't go the way that you'd envisioned, and just your timeline being delayed, but then still always viewing those opportunities with some optimism and, what can I glean from this? What can I learn from this? How can I keep pushing forward and kind of circumnavigate this or get around it in some way that's productive to me and still aligned with the reputation I want to keep moving forward?
Yeah. And well, another I probably learned was I wasn't great at this when I was younger, but if there was something I didn't like, I would make it visible that even in a meeting that I was very upset about it. Um, but like picking your battles, I think is another one. Like, you know, um, I think the past 2 years I've been saying a lot progress over perfection. Um, so even recognizing like, is this really a setback or is this just something that I'm dealing with? Is it really
Yeah.
setting me back, or is it just maybe slightly changing the pathway to getting to the same end goal? Um, so I would say, yeah, like often these so-called setbacks are just it's just you got to change a lane. You're going to the same place anyways. Yeah, nothing has to be perfect, you know. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like not letting perfection be the enemy of good, and then giving up at some of these adversities, just kind of keep trudging on, figure it out.
Yeah.
What what daily rituals or mental frameworks or what have you do you use to stay productive and resilient to some of these setbacks, and have they changed over time? Uh, so you mentioned, like picking battles. That kind of sounds like conserving your energy, conserving your stamina for the really important moments of when to push ahead and when to kind of pull back. Is there anything else?
Yeah, it's well, if you were to go to some of the first places where lacrosse was played, where they still play, like in Six Nations or Akwesasne, some of these indigenous communities, they will say that there's an answer for any problem in your life in lacrosse. And it's just kind of, a cultural piece to the game. And I think of just the way you describe that is not that much different than really playing a lacrosse game. When you're playing offense, you can't sprint 100 miles an hour the whole game. You can't throw your body at and take every single hit the same way. You will burn out. That's not to say you shouldn't try your hardest all the time, but like picking your spots. There's going to be a time where I'm going to like try to beat this guy one on one and go to the net versus maybe that's not the best move. And I would say I've in my professional world, even right now, this is kind of a more or less like kind of a downtime for myself. I'm going hard in the summer, and if I were to just keep trudging on and just maybe that's not on the floor, but I'm gonna bear down this month and you know a- spend as much mental energy on different areas of the organization.
Yeah.
Um, I wouldn't be as productive in the long term, and even look at like professional athletes and to the untrained eye, you probably, you watch Sidney Crosby on the ice and you think this guy's skating as hard as he possibly can constantly. But late in playoffs, in an overtime situation, everyone is picking their battles. Is this a 50-50 battle for the puck I need to win? Or is this a 60-40 where this guy's more likely to win it? So I'm going to hold off. So 6 seconds later, I can, make another decision with more authority. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I definitely on the floor. If you were to just watch a lacrosse game and watch one offensive player just for his whole shift, his or her shift, you'll see they're changing speeds, they're changing, things they do constantly, and you can't. It's hard to change direction going, 150 miles an hour. So that middle ground I find is usually best, especially like even from a mental standpoint. Um, if you spend maybe 50 hours building this project proposal.
Yeah.
And I feel really passionate about it. I put all my mental energy into that. And if it doesn't go well, then, you're probably in a worse place to like make an adjustment and make your next move versus if, you take your time and maybe diversify like, your action. And yeah, I think that's how I keep going. Like I'm able to continue in a role that's typically got a decently high turnover rate. Just by managing that, I guess long term, yeah, just long term energy. And it's important, like what they say, you can't pour from an empty cup. So
Yeah. So
just knowing
like
that going in.
learning where when to say no, learning where your strengths are, where the fights to pick, the grants to apply for, what have you, and kind of keeping some powder dry. It sounds like keeping some powder dry at all times, so that way, you kind of conserve your mental energy. You can see things from a bit more of an overhead view, and then once you identify something that's more of a guarantee or would have has a really good risk to reward profile, then you can throw in that extra little bit into that and kind of just continually do that and not get burnt out along the way.
Yeah. And I mean, I also think like if you're not surrounding yourself with, I guess, individuals that you enjoy working with or maybe are productive, that maybe share similar values and passions, it's like nearly impossible to keep some powder dry. But if you've got a good support group, then that becomes a lot easier. And then over time, you can give more and more and more instead of throwing everything at one thing and then being burnt out early in the lifespan of whatever project you're on. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. What what's one of the hardest decisions you've ever had to make, and how did it test your values?
Hmm. On the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do in my whole life was actually apologizing to someone. Um, I won't say names, but it was an individual who we'll say been butting heads with for a while in my field. Someone that I really felt like was doing damage to really my passion. Um, and I had to make the decision to just go to this person and apologize for me being abrasive in our discussions. Which honestly, I'll be frank, I did not feel sorry at all and did not want to apologize, but just understanding that if the only way through this is forward and the only way forward is to reach some sort of collaborative discussion, or it would become like me or them essentially,
Like a
which was going to
needs
be
of the many away your personal frustrations, or the butting heads of the two of you, that was less important than the kind of the whole organization or the
yeah,
health of the whole organization.
exactly. So yeah, I went up to this person and apologized, and that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do because I've spent many a time with this individual, even thinking about them like waking up frustrated, going to bed frustrated. And I just decided this isn't a way to operate. So that was the first thing I thought. Maybe if I just go apologize to this person and swallow my pride, maybe it'll make things better. And lo and behold, it did. That doesn't mean I'm going to or did fold on any of the things that I felt important, but at least engaging in like a mutually respectful conversation and just pointing out something that I maybe did wrong
Hmm.
to them directly in a private room was that it definitely tested my values. And I think it made me a better person. And honestly, I think I'm ever since that one moment, I feel like I've definitely improved just as an individual in general.
What's your most significant achievement so far? And how did
And
reaching that milestone feel?
well, I would say last year at Nationals at Founders Cup with our junior team, it was in Hamilton, and we beat Victoria in the first game of the tournament, and that was an absolutely unprecedented win. Um, no one from New Brunswick has ever beaten anyone from BC, let alone in junior lacrosse. So that win was really incredible, and I think just the story of our team, the everyone on the floor in that last minute had never played competitive lacrosse until really just through going through COVID, and then 3-4 years later they're beating the best team out of BC's B League. Um, that was an incredible moment. And after we won, our whole staff, we looked at each other and we were like, "What the hell did we just do? Like, did we just like what even was that?" Um, so yeah, and I have a picture of this screen up in the hospitality room of the game was over and the stream was done, and it was just like paused on the YouTube stream, an empty floor with the score on it. And I took a picture of that with my phone. I have a picture of that on my desk. Um, but just like just reaching something that no one ever thought you could, and like working in silence, and then out of nowhere, this thing happens. Yeah, and it was great. And honestly, seeing the reaction of our team when they were like, they were happy it happened, but they were like, yeah, like, what's up? We're here to play. Don't sleep on us anymore. We're a legitimate team. Um, and like seeing the whole, like the 18 men on the bench just like grow as men, in that moment, like just to
Mhm.
realize like, oh, there's a reason, you just sometimes you go for a goal blind, and sometimes you do that. And sometimes it pays off. And for many years it didn't for these guys, and it did in that one moment. So yeah, that definitely that.
That sounds like the ultimate manifestation of what you love about the game, like the beating the other coach and the other team, like in this chess match, and then the energy on the bench, a bit of an underdog story. The excitement that all your players felt, like kind of just top of the level of all those things that are your favorite things about your job, your coaching job.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like I don't know, even like good music, like there's like a crescendo, and it was like the perfect crescendo.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
You've mentioned a little bit on this one. We're going into some relationships and such. So you've mentioned a bit how relationships and who you surround yourself with, if they're ambitious people, hardworking, share the same values as yours, it really helps decrease burnout, helps you make decisions, and kind of it sounds like you all support one another as you kind of pursue an objective together. So how has some of these relationships shaped these journey or shaped your journey?
Yeah, I think it's I don't know, I find particularly with like ambitious men, you've got a lot more room to, I don't know, maybe go at each other, challenge each other. And I don't know, I kind of like that. I have a few friends that, I would say a lot of people think that, one guy in particular that, a lot of people would consider this guy really abrasive and annoying. But, we share a similar passion. And, this guy's like constantly challenging me for whatever. It seems like a guy that's like, whatever but if I think A, I think B, right? Or if you think A, I think B. And it's just a guy that can like challenge you and keep you honest. So like that, I enjoy that company, albeit in not too large of doses. But I also would say like I have a lot of friends and people I interact with regularly, even people in our organization that have, I wouldn't say they're not ambitious, but like their whole, the reason they wake up isn't like achieving this goal. They're happy where they are, and they're in a place in their life where, they're relatively content, and they wouldn't change it for the world. And I think having a couple relationships like that, like to kind of keep you grounded.
Mhm.
Even like, I don't know, our equipment manager, he's, a very hardworking blue collar individual. And sometimes like dealing with frustrating ups and downs through the season, sometimes he'll just look at me and just say, man, like just laugh or something. Like you're allowed to smile. Like
Mhm.
we're in a rank running a junior team. Um, this wasn't around 5 years ago. Like enjoy it. And yeah, so I think it's important to kind of have balance. Like if everyone in your life is a go-getter, absolutely everyone, I think you're in a great position. But, you know, I think it's valuable to have some individuals in your life that like maybe approach the world a different way. Yeah, if I only hung out with other coaches, I'd probably burn out. But keeping them around is important at the same time. So, yeah,
So like the relationships in your life then, you know, have shown you the value of like both stability and ambition and kind of the pursuit of the bleeding edge of a goal, and kind of like on the but like not to take either one too far and to be so stable that you're complacent or so comfortable that you're kind of stagnant, but then not so pushing the envelope all the time that then you burn out, or you're seeking some sort of perfection that would also likely lead to burnout, or just constant unsatisfaction as you pursue this unattainable, perfect, you know, like over the horizon type of goal.
Yeah, I've also seen like it seems to happen a lot in lacrosse, probably because it's, I'll say, the governance structure of lacrosse in general in the country is, I mean, it's interesting. It's like the oldest sport in the country. And I think by virtue of its tradition, the governance side is like a lot slower to move because, cultural change is long and hard. So I see a lot of individuals in lacrosse that, have been doing the same thing since like the 80s, and, they almost seem like they're bitter and resentful. Um, and seeing those individuals, it's like they've almost lost sight of why they do it in the first place because they enjoy it,
Hmm.
especially in volunteer capacities. So, like, I don't know, I talked to some of my friends, like, even over the holidays, and people that I haven't seen in a while, and they'll ask about what I'm doing, and they'll say the same stuff like, "Oh, that's really cool. Like, that sounds like fun." And if there weren't those conversations, I wouldn't. There'd probably be points throughout the year where I'm like, "This is not fun at all. Like, what am I doing?" Um,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, like I think that kind of balance of perspectives around you is, I don't know, just a little easier to see the world for what it is as opposed to just how you see it.
Yeah. What's the role of some of those support systems in your life? And might be reiterative, but helping you find balance, helping you avoid burnout, helping you, take a moment to enjoy the small things, or kind of come back to the reasons why you are there in the first place. At the end of the day, it's, for fun, for the thrill of the emotion that comes with it. Um, is there anything else there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't know, man, maybe it's a sports thing. It's almost like the stereotypical thing, like and I would say box lacrosse and hockey culture are pretty similar. It's often when you go into a locker room, it's, a lot of laughs. So I think I really value like friends and people around me that, are fun loving and lighthearted. Um, Definitely, improves life in my opinion. Like if I go through it, if I have a day and I laugh till I cried, like no matter what happened, that's probably a good day, no matter what I got done or not. Um, so yeah, I think, yeah, people keeping me entertained and happy. That might sound a little crazy, but that's super valuable to me. You know, uh, I'm trying to think of other support systems, like, and people to just tell you, something straight up, like some of the mentors I've had, and I say something, I say my frustrations or my challenges, and then maybe they're just willing to give me an answer that I don't like. Um, but someone just willing to do that, because that's not easy. Like it's not easy to tell, even for me in my role, like it's not necessarily easy to tell an athlete like you are wrong about this and you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
And I knowing that they're not going to like it. Um, but those hard conversations I think are critical in really getting anything done. If you're skating through life and you don't have any hard conversations, well, you're obviously not challenging yourself as an individual, or those around you. So
Yeah, a
yeah, I
bit
think
too
there's like
comfortable
again
then.
like a spectrum. Yeah, there's got, I think for me at least there's a big spectrum. I've got some, I would say, close people that are part of my support system that are very blunt and cutthroat and give it to me straight. And I've got individuals in my support system that probably couldn't care less about, you know, where I'm going with my career, or they're just interested in like spending time with me as a friend. Um, and having a laugh. And I think both are equally as important.
Yeah. Do you find in those moments when maybe you're seeking some more stability or just to relax a bit, you tend to seek out those individuals more so, or they seek you out, or vice versa, when you're seeking a bit of a challenge, talking to your mentor or and you initiating that conversation, or do you find that whether it's like fate or destiny or what have you, but that mentor will uh, come into your life at that point in time and say something, or that that person comes in and challenges something or challenges you in some way, and almost without your direct decision of when that isn't going to happen.
That's an interesting question. I think I don't know. I think if someone's really in your support system, like you could say someone's part of your support group or whatever. Um, but if it's not someone that you regularly communicate with, I mean, I know people have different relationships. Everyone has those relationships where they don't see someone for a year or two, and then you see them, and it's like you never spent a day apart. Um, but at the same time, I mean, I think the individuals you regularly communicate with, that kind of stuff just comes up naturally.
Hmm.
Um, and I think I've been lucky to have, a couple people in my life that are like, yeah, kind of like that. And I think that's from like a mutually beneficial relationship. And if you find yourself in a situation where you have a mutually beneficial relationship, then I mean, I guess there's incentive for, both ways, right?
Hmm.
Both ways of communication. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think that all to say, like the communication between your support system, like the better communication you have with those who support you, like you're just setting yourself up for success.
Yep, fair enough. Um, what values guide your decisions?
Huh, that's interesting. I think
Maybe name, to contain it a bit, maybe your top three.
say hard work, definitely the top one. And I open mindedness would be another one. Um,
Sorry, what was that?
I don't know, and
Openness or honestness?
open mindedness,
Open mind. Okay.
just yeah. So hard work, open mindedness. Um, I don't know. I could list off a bunch. Like as a coach, I have values. As an individual, I have values. But it really comes down to those two. And yeah, I would say communication is another one. Like in general, like what does this decision communicate to the world or the people I'm working with or for? How do I actually engage with people? I know that's kind of like a vague one, but yeah, I think if someone is open-minded, hardworking, and is, you know, eager and willing to communicate, um, I think more often than not, I could be wrong, but those individuals are probably going to be successful and, great people to be around. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Have have those values always been important to you, or how have they evolved over time to become those top three?
I think when I was younger, open-mindedness might have seemed to me as a young man like almost like inefficient. Um, I used to think like, okay, I set a goal and I'm going to do not care about anything but this goal. And where there might be a time and a place for that. Um, not having an open mind can get in the way. So I've definitely learned that as I went on, and uh, that's kind of pointed out to me to one of my mentors that they said that that was one of the things that they thought kind of was like good about me as an individual in my career. Um, so yeah, and I've started to, especially over the past few years, really start to incorporate that more consciously. Um, yeah, so I think from that side, like, that's definitely evolved from, maybe I was naturally more of an open-minded person when I was younger, and I recognize it now and utilize that value in some
Okay.
decisions. Um, and then, I look at hard work, and that really has not changed that much for me. Like, I value hard work, and I mean, that's pretty straightforward. You're either working hard or you're not. Um,
Yep.
yeah.
Was there a book or idea or historical figure that shifted your perspective on life and influences your daily decisions?
Well, I think kind of along that, just the tale of Prometheus, stealing fire from the gods to give to the humans, and then, you know, kind of like supporting the human race against the gods, and then eventually being punished for it. Just the idea of sacrifice, um, and I think that appreciate recognizing and appreciating sacrifice within a group, I think is really important. I think the great thing about that story is in eventually, like, I don't know, thousands of years later or whatever, um, indirectly because of the work he did, was liberated by Hercules. And you could kind of, infer that, okay, would Hercules have existed if it wasn't for, fire being given to the humans and the expansion of kind of the human race?
Hmm.
Um, like a butterfly effect. So I just love that story. Just someone that sacrificed, their own personal situation directly for, and knowing what would happen as the god of foresight, and going through with it anyways, just out of blind faith. I think that's an inspiring tale. And I actually have it's in here somewhere, like a huge tapestry of
Hmm.
Prometheus having his liver eaten by the eagle, but um, my partner doesn't like that up in the house, so it's tucked away.
You have to commit a sacrifice too. You know the consequences. You have to put it up anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, if you were to comment on the tendencies of human nature based on your experiences across careers and cultures and the people you've met, what reoccurring theme stands out? Are humans greedy? Are they curious, ambitious, something else?
Oh, I think there's, like, you know, lots of different types of individuals. Um, I think everyone has ultimately, like, a need to be accepted and to, yeah, feel like, feel valued amongst a group of people. I think if you were to truly live in isolation your whole life, I don't think many people would do well.
Yep.
And I think if you did really well, you're either an extremely exceptional person or there's something probably irregular with you. So I
Yep.
think that, like, that stands out to me, is like everyone wants to be accepted in whatever way. Um, and I think that's like a super motivating factor, especially in coaching. I think of even at junior A, these guys, what they really, really want at the end of the day, above all the wins and accolades, is really they want the people who they respect the most to also recognize and respect their, contribution or ability in the whatever in the on the floor. Um,
Hmm.
and I see it. It goes a really long way when, like, our top scorer praises, like, a guy that's regularly a healthy scratch for doing something really simple. Um, and you can just see it. It's almost like palpable. If you see that happen on the bench, or like someone blocks a shot that only gets two shifts a period. Meanwhile, the guy that's got the ball in his stick every time he has it looks down and says, "Hey, good job, buddy. Keep it up."
Yeah.
Um, and it's just directly there, like that athlete now is like, yeah, I'm a valued member of this group and my place here is significant. And you see it, it's like very acute when you're on a bench, but you see it everywhere in life, even in like past jobs I've had in relationships and like social settings. Um, that understanding of yeah, that like people want to be accepted in the group. Yeah, I don't think I've met anyone that doesn't care about really if they're accepted or valued in a group. Um, Otherwise they just leave the group.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Another individual that we both know, actually, for the audience, Andrew Gibson, he commented the same thing, that connection was was kind of what is a thread that strings us all together, like an innate desire. Um, and we are a social species after all, but that's what he highlighted as well: connection, feeling valued in the community, whatever your community may be. Um, yeah. What is a typical day look like for Chris Burgess? From the time you get up to the time you go to bed.
I think that's where I think I'm really lucky and grateful to have the position I have where, not only do I get to operate in my passion, I kind of have a lot of freedom. So we don't have an office. I work from home. Um, so this time of year, I wake up and I have the freedom to. I don't have to clock in at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. I have things I have to get done, and I get them done. But hypothetically, like even today, if I wanted to, I could have woken up. I could have said I'm sleeping in till 10 if I wanted to or needed to. So I kind of have the freedom of schedule. So, I normally wake up at, I would say between 8 and 9:30, depending on, if I exercised the day before, if I'm tired, how well I slept, whatever. I'll grab a coffee and then, or I'll make a coffee and then I'll come upstairs and to my desk and just look at my to-do list. Um, and then yeah, from there it's a lot of meetings, looking at spreadsheets, design, coordinating programs, that kind of typical stuff. And well, lately I've been trying to exercise partway through my workday, kind of splitting it up, which I really enjoy, as opposed to going to the office and then you're off at 4 or 5, and then you know finding the time to exercise. Well, I can just
Yeah.
build that right into my day. And then when my partner gets home from work, especially this time of year, it's like, okay, well, she's home. I can kind of, unless I have any meetings, I give my attention there. Yeah, it's great, a little more balanced. And then when I get into in season, it's a complete opposite. It is, I got to wake up, I do my performance planning, whatever I need to do, my practice planning, whatever needs to happen. Maybe it's the lineup or the game plan for the game coming up, or whatever. And pretty much every day I get as much done as I can, and then I hit the road. I usually leave around 3 o'clock and I get home at 11 p.m. or midnight and kind of repeat the process. And that's honestly from mid-May to the end of August. So like I said at the beginning, like kind of like a cyclical seasonal seasonal work. I mean, there
Yeah.
is a lacrosse season, right? So um yeah, so I almost have like 2 days, but
Two
yeah,
lives
yeah,
almost. Or, yeah, two
yeah.
standard days. Cool. What are you passionate about currently? I think there's like four or five more questions, this being one of them. Um, what are you passionate about currently outside of your career? Kind of just personal passions, personal pursuits, or hobbies.
Actually, right now, from starting playing again, is it's just getting back in shape. But on a bigger note, like I think what I have struggled with in the past is, what naturally growing up as an athlete, it was all like, I'm going to train to compete, to do my best. And then as I translated or transitioned from being like a high performance athlete to a coach, that physical activity side really changed, and my whole motivation for training was essentially removed. Even at this point, I'm playing senior lacrosse, but you know, I'm not uprooting my whole life to potentially play my very best to like maybe get drafted into the NLL. That's past me. Um, so just trying to learn how to exercise just to be generally healthy. Um,
Okay.
Challenge. And yeah, when talking about like a passion right now, like I'm trying to bridge the gap between, well, I have this team that I'm playing on and I want to perform well, so that's something I can grab onto. Um, but also recognizing like, okay, well, I'm not gonna train 30 hours a week or 20 hours a week all winter to be prepared. I'm gonna do what I can, and it's okay not to give my entire soul to into being the most optimized athlete I can possibly be. Um, so yeah, I think outside of my work, yeah, I'd say that's something I'm passionate about, is just like being healthier. Um, because over the course of the last season in particular, my health habits were pretty poor. I mean, I ate Tim Hortons almost every day because I was on the road, and that's just what I was. I'd go to the rink and get a double double and a chicken wrap. That would be what I ate, and you know, having a more balanced life. I think even now it's what, the end of September, so it's been about 5 weeks away from, I guess, that life,
Hmm.
um, and just having general healthy habits. I feel like way better, clearer, and just physically better. And I feel like if I were to just snap my fingers and go back to like, you know, the same time, um, but a couple months ago, like my elbows would be sore. I'd be probably cranky,
Hmm.
maybe have a slight headache and tired or whatever. So yeah, that's been a passion and a challenge.
Okay. Is it how easy is it to switch from the seasonalities of your job? In mid-May, going from kind of being able to, work on projects and kind of pick at things on your own schedule to balls to the wall for, for most of your days, and then also turn that off or wind that down, and then kind of go back into this bit more relaxed season of your life.
I did, I struggle with that quite a bit actually, and what I found worked for me is when I get back, aside from, well, immediately connecting with friends that aren't necessarily adjacent to me throughout the season, I think is massive for me, and I've done it the past few years. Like I've had an opportunity, I think the past 3 years, like as soon as all this, we'll call it mess, is done with the season and the season wraps up, and it's like almost like if you have a long drive on a highway and you get home late at night and it's just like you just feel wired. It's like
Mm.
that, almost extreme. So I've been lucky enough the past few years, like to be able to immediately postseason, go spend some just social time with my friends for, a few days or a week or whatever that may be, almost like a vacation. And like actually utilizing that. And I think the other thing too is like when I do get home, like after the season, and like taking a couple days and forcing myself just to be bored. And often the first thing I think about when the season's done is like, oh my God, like I can't, how do we make it better next year? What are the steps to take? Who do we need to engage? And it's like, well, I can go through that all right now but I'm exhausted. And if I do that now, like 2 or 3 weeks down the road, I'm going to fall flat on my face. So just like forcing myself to be bored for a day or two even can make the whole difference in a year, I've found. Um, yeah.
What are your plans for the next chapter?
Yeah, I think I'd like to, continue. Well, this is a big year for us hosting nationals. So, um, kind of seeing that through and then the core group of our team's gone. Um, I'd like to, explore more opportunities like in higher leagues and higher and with the National Sporting Organization Lacrosse Canada. Maybe hopefully get a role there at some capacity in the future. Um, yeah, and I think continuing on in, you know, growing the sport in general. Um, and then beyond that, I think at a certain point, inevitably, there'll probably be a more lucrative opportunity in sport. And once I feel I've done what I can with Lacrosse New Brunswick, I think if I've done my job well, there'll be someone else even better position to have the role I have than myself. And so I think that's the next major chapter. I think this is a long one that's still going, but
Yeah.
when that page turns, I think being ready to transition onto someone, a young individual, forward thinking and willing to work and kind of do it the way they think they can, helping that individual move into this role and moving on to a larger role, whether that be with a sport organization like Sport New Brunswick or something where I'm not directly involved in lacrosse, but maybe I'm contributing to the sports sector in a greater manner in general.
Mhm.
But I will definitely always coach until I can no longer speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you want to be remembered at this point in your life? Even though hopefully you still have a good few years left.
Yeah. I don't think if I was remembered as someone who made the people around them better individuals. If I was looking down at my own funeral and someone said that, I think I'd be satisfied.
In a what if scenario, if society faced a major crisis, how would your background prepare you to contribute? And what advice would you give to the world?
Please, if society faced a major crisis, I mean, I think I would just be like, first thing is probably identifying what I can control, what things I have an impact on. Um, yeah, I think that's where I would start. I don't know, like if there was I don't know if the whole world came crumbling down and I don't know if there's like an apocalypse or something. It'd be like what can I control right now? Like and just make sure I have those things under control. And then definitely like communicating with people I trust. Um yeah, and I think then I would be able to find a way to contribute. Um and then what advice would I give to the world? I don't know, I would say just get with people you trust and bear down, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Batten the hatches.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything that I didn't ask in this interview that you'd like to share?
No, I mean, I feel like I just explained my entire individualism to you or individuality. Uh, no, I think, yeah, I mean, like I said before, at the end of the day, like if you're willing to work hard and keep an open mind, like, the opportunities will always open and you can kind of find silver linings and things. Um, I know I already said that, so that doesn't answer your question, but yeah,
No, no. That's
yeah.
Well, like the next one would be, if you could give anybody considering going into your professions, whether that's the political and logistical side of it or the coaching and sport side of it, some advice. Do you think that'd be what you just said?
Yeah, I'd also definitely ask them, like, or tell them to sit down and think long and hard about why they actually want to do that. Because, working in sport in Canada is not very lucrative. You know, with some of the same skills, you could go work in a different industry and, make at times twice as much money as you know, even the even like the executive director of Sport New Brunswick doesn't make a ton of money, but they do it because they enjoy it. Um, so yeah, I would say, what I said before, and that like really make sure that it's something you want to do, um, unless you want to move to the States.
Yeah. Did you learn anything about yourself during this interview?
Oh yeah, I think I've learned it's probably good to maybe even go back to some of the questions you've asked and like even think on that. I think it's been a while since anyone's asked me like, I don't know, how did early challenges influence like my worldview? It's been a while since anyone asked me that. Um, you know, Insignificant habits that have, crescendoed or snowballed into something significant. Who is a major influence, things like these. I mean, often in coaching, you get, a lot of coaching training, especially now, it's all values based. So I've had a lot of time to reflect on my philosophies and values and, decision making processes. But yeah, to kind of think back on your life as a whole, definitely, you know, don't really interact with that much. So I think I've learned that maybe that could be helpful in maybe challenging times to take even a further step back. Yeah,
I go back to the basics. Why am I doing this? Where's that coming from? Like a little bit of a reset or reestablishing of who you are or where you're coming from.
yeah, yeah.
The next question is to set a pay it forward challenge to the next guest to boost their involvement in their own life based on your most prominent value. And so hard work, open-mindedness, and communication were your three most prominent values. The challenge from our last guest, Andrew, uh, he actually provided two because he knows you personally, and he said extra cardio is one of his challenges,
Okay.
and then his other one was because Andrew really values sharing knowledge and seeing positive changes in people's lives. So his question to you and challenge, what are you wishing other people would challenge you on to make a positive change in your life? So it kind of almost alludes to what you were saying before, where mentors will come into your life and suggest advice or maybe more productive ways to do things. Is there something in your life where you wish someone would challenge you a bit more to make a positive change?
Yeah, I think if individuals, um maybe not prompting, so not the right word, but um encouraging me to lean into hard conversations. I think I don't have a problem with hard conversations, but like they're not fun. And I think it's always good to have people around you that, you know, tell you that those things are important. And really in like Eastern Canada, I mean, it's the typical maritime thing, like everyone's nice. Um, but if you ask people from other countries, they will say that, while Canadians are nice, what I've found is some people think that Canadians can be passive aggressive because they don't necessarily engage directly in hard conversations early, just as nice people, so to speak, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So like, yeah, I think if I had more individuals to encourage me to lean into hard conversations, even if it might be with them in particular, um, yeah, I think that would be valuable. And then extra cardio, that's noted. Yeah. Uh, so challenge for the next guest, I would say, I'll kind of go on that theme, like have a hard conversation that you know you need to have, like do it now, do it this week. Um, I think that would be, yeah. I don't know who your next guest is, but um,
I don't know either, so they're in
yeah.
for it.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, well, that is the end of this interview. So thank you, Chris. And if there's anybody still listening at this point, an hour and a half in, thank you for listening. And hopefully you got some good insights into yourself or your career, and are able to use Chris as an inspiration, whether it's whether you're an athlete or looking to get into the logistical or coaching sides of sport, or just you have a particular passion for sport and athletics. Hopefully you're able to get some information off of them and make a better decision or more informed decision into the future. All right. Yeah, thanks for listening. Here, I'll turn off the recording here.